Greetings, Wilkinson. Today my guest on the podcast is Drew Auerbach, and we met at the Bent Theater, I don't know, the last production of the season, I guess. We started chatting. He's involved in a couple interesting groups, and we will be hearing more about that. Before we do that, though, say hi to my peeps.
Hi, peeps.
Glad you're here. Okay, so let's hear a little about your story, your coming out story, where you grew up, blah, 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 whatever you want to share.
So I was born in a sleepy town on the East Coast called Brooklyn, and my parents immigrated to New Jersey, the shore, 4 weeks after I was born. I was the fourth kid and the youngest, and I think they figured they might as well quit at that point. I was raised at the shore. I was raised in a very Jewish family. My parents were one of 12 couples that actually built our temple, a Reformed synagogue. There were no temples at all in that area of New Jersey at the time.
Oh, really?
Yeah, my parents actually had a open house for the different churches and stuff that were there. And this woman kept staring at my mother. And my mom said, "What do you think, I'd have horns?" And she said, yeah.
Oh, really?
Yeah, that's that crazy. Really nice, happy childhood. My parents always said they had 4 only children and kind of encouraged us each to be our own person. And I was real involved with temple and 12 years of religious school. And I even taught special education at the religious school. And then, went to school in Massachusetts, went away. And I really kind of came into my thought I must be bisexual because I didn't really understand gay at the time. I mean, it's back in 81. And when I got older, I met, it was now my ex-wife and best friend, Laura. We were counting panties in Macy's because we were both working there and we were doing inventory, and we fell in love counting panties. And creepy, huh?
Really?
So we went out and we decided that we were madly in love, and we had never met anybody like that, and neither of us had ever thought we'd get married before. You have to understand, I was all of 20 or 21 at the time. And she was dating this guy who had the desk next to mine at Macy's, and I was dating a 36-year-old man named Jack who lived in North Jersey. And, I said, "I think you should know about the person I'm dating. His name is Jack." And Laura said, "Well, do you want to be with Jack or do you want to be with me?" Another reason why I fell in love with her. And I said, you. And so I said, what are you going to tell Bill, why you're breaking up with him? And she said, blah, 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 whatever. And she said, "What are you going to tell Jack?" And I said, "If I don't call him again, I'll never hear from him." And that's exactly what happened. So
it was a one-way street with him.
Yeah. I mean, I was, it was height of AIDS. And I remember going to his house in North Jersey, and his roommates are having sex on the pool table. And, it was just kind of crazy. And that was my orientation. You had sex with men, but you had relationships with women. And I didn't really have, mirrors for healthy gay relationships at the time. I, was, they just didn't really exist. And my parents, who knew I was gay the entire time, when I was getting married, I was marrying somebody who wasn't Jewish, and they were like, "Fine, go down the aisle." They were very happy that I was just walking down
a woman.
Yeah. So, yeah. They were like, "Go, no problem. Just go." And so,
Wait a minute. So they knew you were gay.
Well,
did you
I think
come out to them?
No, because I hadn't really even come out to myself. I thought I was bisexual. And I think that's a lot of what people tell themselves when they're young and really have no gay experiences.
So you had no conversation about the topic with your folks?
Not at that point, no.
But you just said that they were happy you were marrying her as opposed to being gay, right?
Well, they were happy. I think they always suspected, and they were just happy that I chose that path. It was actually really hard when we broke up because my mom, it wasn't about me being gay. It was really, the idea of you watch your child go down the aisle and, you think things, and they of course think things are going to be worse for you if you're gay. And, so years later when Laura and I decided we were getting divorced, we'd moved to Seattle together, had a great adventure together. Literally, she moved across the street. First, I actually just moved upstairs, and then she moved across the street. At that particular time, we were getting divorced. A friend of mine was in a major car accident that caused her a major brain injury. So a woman who would have been a partner at Goldman Sachs now, and her child was a year old. And at the same time, I was starting a business on top of it. So I fly home because my friend's in a coma, and my dad picks me up from the airport, and I say, just I was musing, I was like, oh, my divorce is final today. And my dad said, really? And I said,
did he know you were getting one?
Oh, yeah, no, they knew.
He knew that.
They went through the whole process and stuff. And we did a self-help divorce.
Right.
I mean, we got drunk and spun the bottle to decide who got which of the gifts we got for our wedding.
How long were you married?
We were married 6 years and together 8.
Okay.
And so my dad, when I said that to him, he says, oh, well, can I put an ad in the Jewish Times under available? And I just sensed that he was giving me an opening. And I said, are you ready to have this conversation? And he said, I don't know, am I? And I said, well, if we're going to have it, you're going to pull over and I'm going to drive because you're not going to operate heavy machinery while I laid this on you.
Oh, you thought that he would be that upset?
No, it's just distracting. So I told him, I said, I don't think I'll be dating women. And, I fully understand this experience is not typical for many, many people. And he said, well, I only have 2 concerns. And I said, okay. He said, well, I'm concerned your life is going to be more difficult than it otherwise would be. And I said, we all come into the world with something. We're
right.
Jewish, we're handicapped, we're a woman,
right.
Those are those are societal handicaps, that people put on you, whether it is or not, really.
Right.
And then he said, well, I have another obvious concern. My father was a medical malpractice attorney, so he's really versed in medicine. And I said, whatever your concern is about that, I can guarantee you I know more. And in fact, I had just buried a friend of mine that I took care of just before all this. So that was kind of the extent of it. He told my mom. My mom was fine, except for, just being a little melancholy about, what they hoped for you. And you also have to remember, this is 1987, because, again, they didn't necessarily know that you could be a family with another man, or
right.
you and a baby, or you and a kid, a dog or whatever. And then it went from that to my mother proudly professing to everybody when they would ask about a picture that she had of myself and my former partner, they say, oh, who's that with Stephen? And my mother would say, he's his life partner. And I was like, okay.
Now this is the guy, not the woman.
Yeah, the guy. Yeah.
Okay.
And it was like, yeah, okay. Glad you're on board, but you could calm down a little. And then, I really knew, because when I remember one of my nieces and nephews, they were having bar mitzvah. And at that point, 10 years later, I was with a partner, and my father introduced him as his son-in-law. So, and that.
So they came around.
Yeah. People have the ability to learn and change
right.
if they want to. And
are your folks still with us or no?
No, my mom died last year, and my father died 20 years ago. So, so recently an orphan.
So anything else on that realm you want to talk about?
No, I mean, I have to tell you, experiencing a loss of a parent. I remember when my dad died, it's pretty unexpected. He was 71. He was no model of health or anything like that, but we weren't expecting him to have a stroke and then hang on and for 18 days, which is exactly the time it took me to physically go gray.
Seriously?
Seriously.
You went gray at that time?
Yeah. I didn't have any. I had just turned 40, and I didn't have gray hair. And then
What do you think caused that?
I don't really know. I have a grandfather who apparently went completely white. I think it was upon the death of my great grandmother or some sort of a trauma or something. So
Really?
I really don't know. I mean, he was white when he was like 22 or something.
Wow.
And this grandmother died in the first pandemic, you know. So, you know, she was young, he was young. But yeah, and so, you know, it took a lot for me to get over that. It was a good 6 years until my counselor told me that I was 6 years too late for my nervous breakdown because I had been waylaid by constant tragedy.
Oh, wow.
Including 9/11, including the loss of a friend that I had to identify in his hotel room. This all came one after the other. And then my dad, who literally died exactly a year after my friend at the same time on the same date.
Wow.
Yeah. And, but then my mom, who passed away, she was 90 and a half. And it was a very different experience because my mom, she would constantly tell me, like, you know, I've had a great life. I never thought I'd see a great grandchild, let alone 3. She was very settled.
Right.
You know, that she was happy. She didn't even know that she'd lived to 90 because most of people in my family kick off really early. So, yeah, so it was a whole different thing. But, you know, I think, you know, gay men and their mother, there's always this correlation about a different type of relationship. And from my mother, I gained my design ability. My dad, who was an entrepreneur, I gained my entrepreneurial side and started my own business. So I feel like I'm a perfect blend of both.
Mm. Now, you mentioned the partner you had. So are you single or partnered now?
I'm single now, yeah.
Okay, how long has that been?
A whopping, well, as I say, I voted my partner off the island in the fall, and he moved out on January 4th of this year.
Of this year. Okay.
So fairly
How long
recent.
were you together?
Well, we're in a 6-month relationship that lasted 6.5 years.
Okay. Why do you say it was a 6-month relationship?
Because it should have ended
Oh,
a long time before it did. But, you know, we didn't kill each other during COVID. And I thought, okay, well, that's a positive sign.
right. Right. Is he around here?
No, but he's looking to move back. I mean, we have a really nice friendship now, and that's really good. My partner, who I was with for the 10 years, he lives in the area, and he's one of my best friends, along with my ex-wife.
Is she here too?
No, she's still up in Seattle.
Okay.
But
All right.
I'm godfather to both of her kids,
That's cool.
and even named my goddaughter.
Really?
Mhm.
What'd you name her?
Molly. She couldn't decide for 5 days what to name her, so we did the whole name book thing in the hospital for 5 days, and they kept calling her Baby No Name. And
She was in the hospital that long?
well, she had a
normally
planned C-section. This is also 20-something years ago when the
they
hospital
kept you there.
let you.
Yeah.
Yeah, so she stayed, and yeah, she got named literally 20 minutes before she walked out of the hospital with the baby.
Wow.
Yeah.
All right. Do you want to jump into what you're doing?
Sure.
What are you doing?
Well, I came here, Palm Springs, 7 years ago with the intent of changing careers. I've been an international branding consultant for the last 32 years. And when I moved to Palm Springs, I had still been traveling 6 to 7 months of the year and commuted to New York for 18 years.
Wow.
I always had a philanthropic part of my business where I would, you know, my clients who, I also had a product line of luxury home furnishings that my clients, I would donate within their community a certain percent of what they bought. And I always thought that I would one day end up in nonprofit, you know, and teaching, which I've done also. So I moved here with the intent of getting into the nonprofit arena, changing careers. I had lived here once before, 25 years ago. I started by volunteering, and about 4.5 years into it, I finally got offered a part-time job with the HIV and Aging Research Project. And when I was interviewed, the board member told me, who was handling all of the financial stuff,
Right.
had said to me at that point, he wanted to groom me to be his
Replacement. Right.
not predecessor. And 6 months later, I became the COO and Director of Business Development, which in a very small nonprofit means you're also the garbage man, and I take care of all the marketing, the website, the newsletter. The very few people that we have working do the same. We all do a lot. I've really, I was diagnosed with HIV 20 years ago. It's not just giving back, but giving back to an aging community because,
Right.
HARP was started 9 years ago because the aging HIV community, but like at this point right now, about 55% of all people with HIV are 50 years or older. By 2030, that'll be 75% of the people.
Well,
And people with HIV come with different comorbidities. They have different struggles with nerve issues, cognitive issues, things like that. So what our organization does is we get involved with the research studies. Some are done through pharmaceutical companies. Some are like one of the larger ones we finished, is NIH sponsored. And then we have a huge educational arm. We do, now we'll be doing 3 yearly symposiums, soon to be 4 actually, and our very first women's conference here in Palm Springs, because people kind of forget that women have HIV, and the attention placed on them is very different too. It's almost like gay men have the corner on HIV. We've been trained so that we can talk about it and things like that, where it's a very isolating thing for women very often. And so we're doing this conference on June 8th.
is the age part of the women's the same as the men?
It is, but even more interesting, like we have one person who will be speaking who's a vertical. And a vertical is somebody who was born with HIV.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And then people don't realize that those people still exist, that they're born, it's passed from mother to child. So we had a vertical a couple of years ago who spoke, and it was very enlightening to the audience because the audience was primarily older gay men.
Right.
And they were even like shocked, oh, that still happens? And she got up there. She was fabulous. She was 36 years old. And she said, I've been aging with HIV just as long as you have. And I have the same comorbidities and problems. And, she actually got a standing ovation. She was the most popular speaker that year.
Well,
so women often get pushed to the side. And people, when they think of HIV with men, people are very assumptive. They think it's all about gay men. Right. They forget about drug use and, being passed from mother to child, all different people. With women, it's even more so because, like, we have a speaker in our September conference who is a Muslim Black woman who came from the projects in Philadelphia, was sent to jail for drugs, and she got diagnosed in the prison because she was starting a group for Muslim women, healthcare, and bringing attention. So it's, there are a lot of forgotten people because of how assumptive we are about who gets HIV.
What is gay men primarily, though? So,
yes and no. I mean, in African countries, that's not necessarily true. In drug use, fortunately, thank God, it's far less. And the perception, I got HIV 20 years ago. When you had HIV 30 or 40 years ago, it was a death sentence, period, end of story.
Right.
When I got HIV, my doctor said, well, that's the last thing that's going to kill you. And, the drugs were on the market. It's barely, I've been fortunate in my experience with the drugs. I haven't had problems with them, and, which is not true of a lot of people. And so it's really not caused an interruption in my life, But when I found out, I didn't think that I could date somebody who wasn't HIV positive. I was, that was my thinking, because nobody understood U equals U back then. That if you're undiagnosed, you're undetectable. And that's only a concept that was actually brought to the forefront in 2015, even though it was true in 2012. So
I'll say that again.
U equals U. So U equals U means that if you have no viral load and your CD4 shows that you have 200 or fewer copies of HIV, you are that you're considered undetectable, but you cannot transmit HIV to somebody else in that case. And there are several organizations here who have done a lot on that. We're doing, in our women's conference, we're doing a thing about U equals U, sexual stigma and stuff like that, because not everybody's educating that, even though it's been known for, close to over 10 years.
Right.
So it really opened the door for a lot of people in terms of how they thought of themselves. It's not to say that other people, you shouldn't take PrEP or PEP. People who are non-HIV positive should still do that, because you can get a plethora of other nasty things.
So what is the main goal of HARP?
So our main goal and our mission is to make life better for people aging with HIV.
Okay.
So we do that through research and dispensing that information to people we do a monthly thing here every month at the Cultural Center. We have a different topic, whether it's HIV and the law, or we just had one about HIV and spirituality. Next month, we're having one by Dr. Ami Student, who's a psychologist, who's doing a thing about psychological approaches to chronic pain. So we touch on a myriad of subjects, and every single month, we dispense this information. And we've also created a Facebook group that was based on actual research that we did that showed that people who are isolated or lonely, people with HIV, this started during COVID actually, were in fact more susceptible to cognitive decline. And this is not necessarily true of just people with HIV. Right. I mean, I witnessed this in my mother, during COVID, because there's stigma, and a lot of people with HIV feel very isolated to begin with. Certainly it became prevalent. So now we're working on creating this virtual village. And then once we do this beta test for a year, assuming the results are the same as the study, we'll actually create an actual online platform, a social media platform for people aging with HIV.
Cool. What's your other group?
3.5 years ago, I got together with two partners and started as the Coming Out Project. And it went through a zillion iterations. We wanted an organization that would help people in the coming out process. And then it went to an app, and then it went to a book, and then it went to whatever. And basically what we discovered was that there is a lot out there for people who need coming out support, in major organizations that already do this. But there's very little out there for people to support people, particularly in more marginalized areas of the country, once they come out or once they realize they're gay. So we changed it, and it's the Chosen Family Project. Pretty much all gay people know what a chosen family is, because many people, they rely on the people around them, their friends, not necessarily the biological family,
right,
to offer the type of support and love, and even traditions. I have traditions with, Thanksgiving and stuff like that, or recipes that we share that we do at every event or whatever. Right. But it's also, chosen families, like in my case, don't belie my biological family. I'm lucky to have both,
right.
But so many people, particularly in the southern part of the country and the middle part of the country, don't. When you grow up or live on one of the coasts, you have a very skewed perspective about how liberal people are in this world, but the reality is completely different. So we started this organization to lend support to people. We support other nonprofits in certain areas. So we support a nonprofit in Mississippi, for example, called the Spectrum, which is the Spectrum Center, which supports people with housing stuff. I mean, they still have situations where somebody will need housing and a motel or a hotel will not house them because they're gay. We're connected with Kalamazoo, where they call it their LGBT center, they call it KZoo. Well, people don't realize Kalamazoo is like one particularly liberal-ish part of the state, but it's kind of like here in the Coachella Valley. You know, people think that, Palm Springs, it's a gay mecca, you know,
right.
50% of our population is gay, so like that, but they forget that we're surrounded on all sides by hate.
Actually, to the east.
Yes, to the east, and, you know, but all directions. So what we're doing in order to move our program along is we are in the process of putting together a book, which is going to be kind of coffee table format, but it's going to be made up of stories told by people of their chosen families, how they started, who they are, traditions with photography. What we're hoping to do is essentially, given all of the legislation that's out there now and the hate that exists, I mean, 568 or more pieces of legislation introduced since the beginning of 2024.
Wow.
That we're seeing this as a real call to action, that we need to publish and memorialize that this exists in the United States, memorialize it, and memorialize that love is love, that you find it. So we're hoping through first the publication of the book, and then soon after we're hoping, we're working to do a documentary about chosen families. The book will start generating income so that not only can we support these marginalized communities through their nonprofits, but also that we could start offering scholarships, educational scholarships for LGBTQ people, and also, you know, moving scholarships, if you would, you know, like hopefully at some point we hope to have enough money that we can help relocate people who need to get out of bad situations.
Right.
And to safe situations.
Yeah, what is your role there?
Kind of like HARP. You know, we all wear a lot of hats, but my role primarily has been in the legal, the accounting, and the marketing. I'm also, you know, a published writer and speaker, and one of our partners, she's also a published writer and stuff. So we're the people who are going through and editing stories. And when people want to do a story, you know, not everybody's a storyteller and not everybody is a writer, certainly.
Right.
So we offer people different options. We can interview them in person, online. We will write the story. Nothing at all gets published without somebody's express legal consent to have it. And we're also finding that a lot of people in the country are hesitant to put their name on a story because
of where they're at.
Because of where they're at, or just even people not too far from here, ramifications, like all of a sudden your name is on a book in Barnes & Noble. And so we've given people the option, absolutely, to write a story anonymously. And we're actually, you know, considering, depending on what we get and how many stories, doing a full section of the book called Anonymous, which is about and explaining that these stories were shared anonymously because people are afraid of repercussions.
And there wouldn't be photos with those?
No.
So where's the book project right now?
This is our summer of story gathering. We're still gathering stories. So if you've got a story, go to thechosenfamilyproject.org and click on stories and tell your story. There's a form on there, and reach out to us. We're hoping that we have enough content that we can physically publish at the beginning of the year, January, February, but it's all going to depend on the stories and the art and the photography that we get, you know, from people. So, you know,
Are you going to self-publish that or try to find a publisher?
We're actually looking to find a publisher. We're looking at some of the, the ones that are typical, like Taschen and Rizzoli, who do coffee table books, but more so we're looking out into presses that specialize in telling socially significant stories. There are lots of publishers, and also we're looking at university publications. We're starting our great road trips this summer where we're hitting up all the LGBTQ centers around the country to speak to them about stories like we've already spoken right here in Palm Springs to College of the Desert. And in fact, our wonderful intern comes from there, from the social justice group that's led by the person who's in charge of the LGBTQ center. We're looking at LGBTQ centers, but we're also looking, like my university, I went to University of Massachusetts in Amherst, and when I was there, the LGBTQ department, or whatever you would call it, was this like crappy little office that like you had to hunt around to find, and,
Right.
3 desks shoved in this tiny space. Now, apparently, and I haven't been back since, I've been back to teach, but I haven't been back since they built their own LGBTQ center. And apparently it's like a model
Oh, really?
for other ones. Yeah. And it's happening all over the United States, that these LGBTQ centers in certain universities are becoming huge hubs of socialization, political efforts, things like that.
Well, cool.
Cool.
All right, we're at the point of the podcast where I always ask my guest, what have you learned in your life? What do you live by?
I have a few mottos I live by. The first one, which took me almost 60 years to fully adopt, is when something seemingly goes wrong, I always ask myself, did anybody get hurt and did anybody die? And if the answer to those two questions is no, it's not such a big deal. And then my mom and my grandmother had great sayings. People who worry about little things don't have big things to worry about.
Oh. All right. So we're going to put links to your different organizations in the notes, and they can find you there. And hopefully you guys can connect.
Terrific. Thank you. I look forward to hearing from people.
Yeah, thanks for coming in.
Thank you.